Hi, everyone, and welcome to Demoboost Demologue podcast. This is where we talk about all things demos and the incredible teams behind them. Whether it's mastering demos, empowering pre-sales, or building strong sales team, we'll cover it all. I'm Anna, your host and the co-founder and CMO of Demoboost, the all-in-one demo automation platform. So for our very first episode, I'm thrilled to have David Yockelson join us today, a distinguished analyst at Gartner, where he specializes in sales technology and sales enablement. With years of experience at the intersection of technology and sales, David has become one of the most knowledgeable voices on the evolution of demo automation. So hello and welcome, David.
Oh, thank you so much for the warm introduction, and I appreciate your having me here.
Pleasure is all mine. So, David, you have this deep understanding of both the vendor landscape and the buyer needs, and that gives you a unique perspective. You understand the technical intricacies of the industry, but you're also able to filter them through the lens of the buyer, providing strategic insights that are both practical and forward-thinking. So having worked closely with both sides, you're an expert on how demo automation is shaping the future of the sales process. So today, I wanted to dive deeper into the process of selecting a demo automation platform and how the buyers can make sure that their choice is future-proof. But before, and I hope you don't mind, before we jump into the future, I wanted to take a step back and reflect on the past few years. So there have been significant developments with various technologies emerging to address different use cases. Tell me, what do you think were the most significant developments from the buyer's point of view?
Well, I think it's been a kind of a lightning 3 years, let's say. And I think that the market itself and as you're talking about the technologies in it have matured quite a bit. Although I still think we've got a long way to go just in terms of massive adoption, let's say, which is good news for you all and your competition. And just to put a finer point on that, my estimate is, if there are, let's say, 200,000 SaaS companies out there, maybe we're penetrated into 20,000 of them at best. So long way to go. And even within those, I think, within the existing customer set, there's a lot of expansion opportunity. And this will hook back to the evolution of the capabilities and the space and the technology. So to answer your question directly, if you go back 3 years, I think there were still quite a few instances in which a customer would try out the software and it wouldn't quite capture their application well. So I think that in some cases the expectation exceeded the capability. And in addition to that, it was much more, and I'm overplaying a little bit, but I think it was much more arduous than it is now. Creating demos took longer. It was harder work. The UIs of the products weren't as refined, and the capabilities weren't as expansive. So 3 years ago, there was still, I think, a question of, would this technology actually do what it's purported to do and work for me? That's effectively gone away. I'm as a cheerleader for the market. I'm happy to say that I think 99% of the conversations I have and the clients that I speak with have not had a negative experience, at least in terms of a product working, in terms of capturing their environment, that there is a vendor that will capture what you have. End of story, one way or the other. So I think we've gotten beyond that. And at the same time, the ability to create a demo quickly, integrate it with the right things, and have it tell your story for you is much easier than it was, and to the point where speed and ease tend to be among the highest criteria that customers have, particularly on what I'll call the marketing side of this equation. I think that goes along on the sales use case side as well, but there are other things that are requirements there. So things have gotten better technically. I think the other thing that's happened is there are not many more, but there are more vendors that handle more situations, more use cases. So there are still companies in this market, and there are 35 some odd companies in this market currently. That could be 40 by next week, but let's say around 35 right now. There are still companies that have a smaller range of capability and therefore won't support as many use cases as fully. It's my view of the world that being strategic in this market and building moats means that you can solve for more situations, because most companies, particularly larger companies, but I think the same is true for smaller companies with smaller budgets, don't want to have to make multiple product decisions. And because the technology works, it will spread. So I think we've started to see vendors that, as I'm sure we'll talk about more, offer more ways, not only more ways to create demos and thus support more use cases, but even within those, gradations of capability. So I can support live demos, and in some cases, I can add synthetic data to those demos so that I can create context more easily, and so on. So those are just some of the things that I think have changed. And by the way, we haven't even touched the subject of Gen AI yet, which is driving some change.
Yeah, that would be my next question, because what do you think is the next breakthrough? Is that the AI, or is it something different?
So yeah, it's a weird inflection point time in the market where I think the market itself is poised for a lot of growth. So like I said, there's 1/10 of the market that's actually satisfied in owning a product, and I think because it's proven itself, there's a huge potential for growth with the current set of products. At the same time, I absolutely believe that when we look at this space 12 to 18 months from now, which isn't a long time, it's a very short time in Gen AI years. And when we look that far out, I think that the incursion of and the use of Gen AI is going to change pretty substantial portions of the market. We already see advantages in synthetic data creation through Gen AI. We've already seen, and I talk about it like it's commonplace, but multiple languages, avatars that are used, translation, those are the less exciting, I guess, elements of Gen AI that are changing things. But we're going to get to the point, and arguably we're already at the point, although it's early, where you'll give a prompt, or you'll use an interface that effectively generates a prompt for Gen AI that generates a demo for you. We're there now at a relatively simple, in a relatively simple manner, like creating the equivalent of a screen capture demo. But that's going to improve very quickly, and I think that's going to change certainly going to change the prospects for a number of the vendors in this space. And I think it'll change the way that people use the technology as well.
So what I'm hearing in the past 3 years, and that's been a massive on steroid time for the category, we started with proving this demo creation concept. And I think we don't need to prove that anymore. And while we have proven that we can be capturing those interfaces, those demos, and the automated demos can look like the real deal, and there is still more to come. Then we went into as well all those different use cases, and this is as well something that I would like to focus on, because what's your view on the evolution of the use cases and how which demos are automated across different organizations?
Yeah, so I think easy to say that the top two, and we can give our views on the most popular use case in a second. But the top two tend to be what I'll just characterize as marketing and sales oriented. And by marketing oriented, I mean website embeds, website links, demos sent as part of a campaign or a leave behind, that kind of a thing. Whereas on the sales side, it's characterized more by live demos. So the marketing use cases are asynchronous, and the benefit is I don't have to schedule a meeting with an SDR to show somebody a product or a demo of a product. On the sales side, we're talking about live demonstrations. Live has different connotations, but right here, I mean, an SDR or an AE or a pre-sales person or whomever giving a demo to one or more people. And that use case is valuable because it replaces the need to spin up production systems that may or may not be available, create data to create a demo in those production systems, and risk internet non-connectivity, all that kind of stuff. So those are the most frequent two. And then, which of those happens more often? I think, there's certainly more, how do I want to say it? There are more marketing use cases potentially than there are sales use cases, just because there's more websites than there are sales teams, I think, or at least large enough sales teams, and more uses on the web and in campaigns and all of that. However, I think that the demand for this technology has been higher on the sales side than it has been on the marketing side. Some of that is timing, some of it is vendors that have been around longer, focused more on the sales side. But that's kind of the way I see it. And then, the other use cases that have varying degrees of popularity are those that are used by product managers. So I have a new feature, new capability, I want to show off what's in my roadmap, but I don't have a production version of it yet. Customer success, where it could be, again, instructing a customer on how to use a feature, or it could be something for expansion. And then I know I'm forgetting one, but those are among the partners. Who am I talking to, right? So channel enablement, which is kind of part of the both sales and marketing. That's another. Yeah.
And I keep coming back to the poll that you posted on LinkedIn because I think that touches on this important versus prevalence of the marketing versus sales use case. It was surprising to me that the use case that was chosen as was it most important or most prevalent, was the live demo.
The one that wanted to solve most often, yes, it was the sales or the live, and by a fairly substantial amount, which surprised me too. But my reasoning for that was I think many of the marketers don't know what they don't know yet. But having to create a demo is a near and present issue on the sales. So for every company that sells software. So and arguably there's more pain being felt there more constantly, whereas the marketing side is do we have a better mousetrap? In a better form of content that'll convert more effectively.
Yeah, makes sense. So we talked about all those evolutions in terms of technology and actually catering for different use cases. But what do you think is the state of the buyer's minds? You said that about 20% would maybe know or talk about demo automation. Do they grasp the full potential of the platform?
No, I think pretty confidently I can say no, and I say that for a few reasons. So it was that I think that the penetration so far of the technology is at about 20%. I think knowledge of the technology is probably closer to, let's say, 40-50%. And I think that's changed. It's gone up. My anecdotal data says that maybe 60% of the conversations I have, so I'm even changing the number, but maybe 50 to 60% of the conversations, the people know that there's something out there, and increasingly they can name a few vendors that they've heard about, but they have no idea how to tell one apart from the other. So that's one thing. I think the other thing that I find, or I have found very interesting in the recent past, is as I talk to customers that have done significant deployments, they're not using the most complicated technology in them. And what I mean by that is, without getting into hairy details, that there are 5-6 different ways to create an interactive demo or to do demo automation, ranging from interactive video to capturing a screen to doing cloning to doing sandboxing. Most of the deployments out there by far are at the lower end of the capability spectrum. So screen capture with some amount of HTML edit and capture, not nearly as much of the cloning. And that's true in the sales situations as well, which is very surprising to me. And so why do I think that is? I think, again, it's part of wanting to be out in the market with or have a success in initial deployment, and speed is of the essence. But I think that's going to change. And I think, as people and the organizations get more comfortable with the technologies, and most of these deployments are not that old. As they get more comfortable, I think we're going to see more diversity in the accounts and start employing the different modes of demo creation where they're best suited.
So that's interesting. And do you think that there is more that us vendors could be doing on educating the market? Is that the vendors' education topic for now?
Yeah, I mean, as a pundit, analyst, whatever you want to call me in the market, I take some blame. I clearly either not enough people are reading my stuff or I'm not doing a good enough job. So I'll take some of the blame. But yeah, I think that and I'll try to articulate it simply, I think that the vendors could do a better job of matching up the buying situation, let's call it, or the point in the funnel, or however you want to think about that, with the type of product experience that buyer needs, and then what type of demo or what mode of creation gets you there the best way. I think, there's certainly enough information out. I do cloning, I do this, I do that, but I am pretty confident that, the vast majority of people, that the 50 to 60% that know there's technology out there, don't know why one versus the other.
That's it. And so the organizations, let's go back to the numbers, right? About 50 to 60% of those with whom you talk are aware and interested. Then about 20 have purchased, and they are using single or less complicated technologies or implementations. So what happens when they are approaching the purchase? Are they buying with a single use case in mind,
No.
or are they already thinking about the future?
No, I think, and this is anecdotal, but I think it's an empirical set of data wrapped in anecdotal experience. The conversations I have suggest that it's all single use cases. So, all for the most part. Like any other technology purchase, companies tend to buy things to solve a pain point. And even though our data tells us that purchases are made more easily when multiple functions are involved, it's really hard to get buy-in across multiple functions, especially if I'm marketing and I need this and I want you and sales to buy into it also, and a whole bunch of reasons why that's hard to do. So, and I think the other direction is true also, where if we're right that the majority of interest has been on the sales side, they don't care what's going on the website, or they don't care about investing in what's going on the website. They want to solve their poor pre-sales SE's problem of, I have too many demos to create and not enough time to do it. So yeah, so I think it's mostly been single use cases. But I'm happy to say that the conversations that I have, I always suggest that, to a client, you're going to find that this technology works. Doesn't matter where you start in marketing, start in sales, start in product. It's going to work. You're going to like it. It's going to spread. And because of that, you got to think about, what's going to have to be supported next. The larger companies that have what I'll call demo programs, or what I jokingly call a demo czar, somebody or some function that's charged with managing the product experiences that they have. Those companies get it. And they, even if they didn't in the very initial purchase think across, they certainly are now. So they're very much invested in making the strategic decision.
So that's actually interesting. So what you're saying is obviously the decisions happen here and now, and we're looking at a single use case, and we're buying a tool that solves this immediate need. Am I hearing you correctly that what the utopia could or should be is actually starting with creating a demo process, demo teams, demo center of excellence, and then moving into the future?
Yes and no. I mean, I it's hard to say if I talk to a product marketer or, whoever owns the website in a company and they say, look, I need something that converts my visitors effectively, or my free trials aren't being used, what can I do to get people into them better? We're going to solve that problem. But I will always caution them that you're going to solve this problem and you got to think about how else you're going to use this. So, I don't think you always have to think or make the purchase to solve everything at once. However, there are enough products in the market that inherently solve all those use cases because of the functionality. That I think it's worth looking. So, even if it's a one-off, in terms of what somebody's going to purchase, I typically tell them, look at this one, but look at that one. And they're both going to solve the problem, but this one's going to do more, when invariably you're going to want to do more with it.
So just to sum up, you are talking about this future proofing and potentially thinking about the future use cases, and to map it to what you said before, as vendors, or we should be educating on what is the best technology for the use case. So what would be the reasons? What is the list of reasons for the buyers to think about, okay, what are the types of demos that I might want to do in the future? And how many capabilities I might need in the future, how they approach that, and what would be the benefit of this approach rather than just solving the problem here and now?
Yeah. So I think if you think about it in terms of, so I like to use the term product experience as a way to connote the different ways that a prospective buyer will want to interact with the product or something like it all the way through the buying process. And I think the easiest way to think about it is that well, I'll contradict it in a second, but the later you get, or as you progress through the buying process, the more real and the more contextual that demo has to be. So I may have something on my website that gives me an idea of features and capabilities, but when I get to the point of scoping and trying to convince the rest of my buying team that this is the right product, I'd better be able to see something that works with something that looks like my data, my scenario, my pain points, those sorts of things. And to get there, you're going to need a higher fidelity product experience, something that looks and acts a lot more like the actual product, short of going into POC or something like that with the actual product. So I think that's one way to think about it. You can also think about it in terms of the category that you're in as a vendor and the audience that you're working with. So when you have a more technical audience, and this is something found true in product-led growth also, the more technical the audience, the more they want their hands on the product early and often. So in those cases, you can't afford to wait till you get later in the funnel. You want those users to experience the real thing and maybe something really close to the real thing. And as we know in PLG, not every product lends itself to a free trial or a freemium. There may be too much risk. There may be too many requirements. The security of the customer may not let them do whatever. And so the best way for them to experience something that's a lot like the product might be a cloned interactive demo, or it could be a sandbox, or it could be both. And actually, in some cases, multiples of these product experiences are what will carry the day. And I think that actually is going to be true more and more often as we go forward.
Yeah, that's definitely something to consider for many organizations out there. And it's difficult, right? Because at the same time, we are asking organizations to try something completely new, and already think about the next step. And for many organizations, it's very difficult to combine at one purchase decision. And when you're talking to your clients, do you think that many of them, or there are any playbooks on how they are trying to dip their toe into something completely new, but already thinking that this might be something bigger? Have you seen some teams doing that extremely well, and what would be their success method?
I don't think there's anything magic other than being clear about your requirements, or establishing a rigorous set of requirements that will address the span that you think you're going to have to address. And then, but that's not different from any other technology. If we can help, we have a market guide that has critical capabilities and the criteria that people should be looking at or considering. But no, I think that the work is done by the organization to figure out what it is they want to solve and what's most meaningful to them. So for some, if I'm on the sales side of the equation, then I need fairly deep, tight integration into Salesforce so I can do attribution, I can make it part of my opportunity flow and all of that. And on the marketing side, you have other requirements. So it's just being judicious about it. But I want to come back on you raise a really important point. So we're talking about why haven't companies gone full bore into the more complex stuff. You said it, you captured it. This is a new medium, and people just don't know what to expect. Is it going to be easy? Are they going to be hard to change? Is it going to be real life enough? That kind of stuff. One of the things that's helped that, I think, is the number of freemium offers in this market. I think that's kind of giving people more comfort to make a decision. So
for sure. And so you were talking about your market guide and everything that we discussed. Would you care as the last point in here to enumerate a buyer's checklist? What do buyers need to consider when buying or we're selecting a demo automation?
Yeah, so I think there's a high level set of criteria that would go with any sort of decision. So vendor stability, customers that are like you, security, that sort of stuff. When you get that's easy. When you get past that, then I'm trying to think which order to do this in. So I, as you heard, I believe that working with a vendor that is going to provide you a range of capability that will, future-proof you against what you want to do later, I think is really important. So, it's easy enough to evaluate vendors in the space. So take a look at ones that don't, and also take a look at ones that do, and then understand the trade-offs. So that's another thing. And then apart from that world of demo creation, I think this market, for better or for worse, is very price sensitive. You could say that about any purchase, but I hear it constantly. More so on the marketing side than the sales side, but relatively inexpensive and also incredibly easy to use consistently are the top two things that I hear people asking about. After that, it's integration. It's analytics, which we didn't even touch on, but the more data you can get out of people looking at your demo, the more conversations you can have. So that's good stuff. The ability to, I think, being able to build a demo center is important. Works two ways. One is the demo center that you might put on your website, so people could look at 8 different interactive demos that you create, but also the demo center that allows you as a demo czar to manage what's going on and not create the what in the United States we call the Wild West of people doing crazy things that they shouldn't be doing. So that's a nice set of things to think about.
That's great. So yeah, I think thanks very much. This has been very insightful, and I think it's going to be helpful in educating the market that we talked about. There definitely is much interest. So voices like yours are helping in this education very much. And I hope that we can be joining forces and helping the buyers a way better in understanding what's out there and making them make this leap. So yeah, thanks very much for this conversation.
Anna, thanks so much for the opportunity. And I'm so happy to do this. And I wish this technology had existed when I was in your shoes. That's all I can say.
So true. Well, thanks.